Picture this, it's 1994, and Brazil is dealing with a brand new democracy, but also, a huge problem with crime. Then this essay drops, and it makes an absolutely explosive claim. It says the violence isn't just about poverty or police work, but that you can trace it directly back to the country's artists and thinkers. So in this explainer, we're going to break down that really provocative argument.
So this is the core of it, the author's really startling claim. He's arguing that for more than half a century, the cultural elite in Brazil haven't just ignored the crime problem. No, he says, they've actively poured fuel on the fire by creating a culture where the criminal is actually the hero.
So you're probably thinking, wait a minute, how do you connect a novel or a movie to actual violence on the street? That's a huge leap, right? Well, that's exactly the question we're going to tackle here. We're going to walk through his argument piece by piece.
Okay, so the first piece of his puzzle is all about culture. The author's whole point is that for decades, Brazilian art has been systematically putting the criminal up on a pedestal. Now, what's really key to the author's argument is that this wasn't some new thing. He says this has been going on for a long time. He traces this line, right? It starts way back with these big, important novels in the 30s, then it picks up steam with the famous Cinema Novo film movement in the 60s, and just keeps going until, he claims, it's basically baked into the national culture.
And he's not just saying, oh, they made the bad guys seem a little more human. No, he's arguing it was a total flip-flop of right and wrong. The criminal, they're painted as this good person in heart, just a victim of a cruel world. And the regular person, the one who follows the rules, they get turned into this ugly cartoon, selfish, grotesque, and just plain bad. To really nail this down, he brings up a specific example from a classic novel. He talks about this book called Angustia, where, get this, the murderer, who's clearly disturbed, is written to be more likable than the person he kills. And what was the victim's big sin? He was wealthy and happy. The author says the hidden message here is pretty dark. Individual murder is only a problem because it's not a full-on revolution.
So that cultural piece leads right into the next part of his argument, which gets a little more philosophical. He's saying this wasn't just about movies and books anymore. It actually started to build a whole new, upside-down way of looking at morality. He gives it this really dramatic name, the monstrous precept. And the idea behind it is pretty simple, but he says it's powerful. It's this belief that society is the one that has to be good and fair, not you, the individual. So if society is unfair, well then your own bad actions kind of get a free pass.
So how does that actually look in the real world? Well, the author points to what he calls a huge moral double standard. He says it creates a situation where who you are matters more than what you did. For example, a killer from a poor neighborhood, they might be seen as a victim who deserves a break. But a rich CEO who cheats on his taxes, throw the book at him. He's the real villain.
And this is where the author draws a really sharp contrast. He brings up this theologian who said, look, the whole point of being a moral person is trying to be good even when the world around you isn't. But the author claims that Brazilian intellectuals just flipped that completely on its head. They basically washed away any sense of personal responsibility and replaced it with this big, fuzzy demand for social justice.
So, you gotta ask, where did this whole monstrous precept idea even start? Did it just pop up out of nowhere? According to the author, absolutely not. He claims it wasn't an accident at all. He says he can trace it all the way back to one specific political directive, years and years ago.
He points to a single year, 1933. That's when he alleges the Comintern, which was basically the international wing of the Soviet Communist Party, sent a memo to their people in Brazil, and it had a very clear mission.
The instructions, according to the essay, were super specific. Step 1, get in with the local bandit gangs. Step 2, spin their crimes as part of a class struggle. Step 3, pump out books, articles, and art that sell this new story. And while you're at it, take over the intellectual groups to make sure everyone hears it.
And the author claims this plan worked so well that it just became the truth, the accepted wisdom. He says generations of writers, artists, and professors kept repeating these same ideas, not because they were all in on some big conspiracy, but because it was just easier. It became the default setting, what he calls mere mental laziness.
And this is where the argument really escalates. We're moving past just ideas and culture now. The author makes his most explosive claim yet, that this all morphed into direct, hands-on collaboration with actual criminals. He lays it out in 5 steps. First, he says you have the culture making crime look cool. But then, he alleges, it gets very real. Left-wing militants start going into prisons and teaching guerrilla warfare to regular criminals, basically professionalizing them.
After that, you get political movements trying to frame gang bosses as community leaders, efforts to weaken the police from the inside, and finally, actively working against any military or police crackdown on crime.
So you can kind of picture it like a pyramid. The author sees this whole big base made of culture, the books and movies that made crime seem okay. That base holds up the next level, which is the direct, tactical help. And right at the very top, the peak of the pyramid, is the political action, actively shielding criminals and hamstringing the government's ability to fight back.
But wait, there's more. The author adds another whole layer to this. He argues that the huge demand for illegal drugs, it didn't start in the poor neighborhoods. He claims it started on college campuses and in artsy circles back in the 60s. That intellectuals were the ones who made drug use cool and trendy, and in doing so, they created the customer base that made the big drug cartels so powerful.
So all of this builds up to the author's final point. And this one isn't about what people did, it's about what they didn't do. He calls it a complete moral failure to own up to the results.
You can really feel his frustration here. He says, look, with all the talk about crime, with all the articles and debates, he has never, not once, seen a Brazilian intellectual stop and ask themselves, hey, did we play a part in this? Did our ideas help create this mess? And to really hammer this home, he pulls out this really chilling quote from an old poet, "I am the action of your thoughts." In the original poem, it's this scary dream figure with a weapon saying it. The author's point is unmistakable. The violence you see in the real world isn't some separate thing from the ideas in books. It is those ideas brought to life.
So, after laying out this entire case, from art and culture all the way to direct action, what's the author's final judgment? What's the bottom line?
His conclusion is just scathing. He basically says that because they created the culture, trained the criminals, and then undermined the police, the country's intellectuals have lost any moral right to even talk about crime. In his eyes, they're not just observers, they're accomplices.
And that's really where this whole thing leaves you. It pushes you to ask this really tough, uncomfortable question that's way bigger than just Brazil. How responsible are people for the ideas they put out into the world? If someone takes your idea and does something terrible with it, is that on you? There's no easy answer, and that question is what makes this argument so incendiary.